I found it. The Pokemon community being so toxic that it proves beyond any doubt I'm not the problem, and on a TCG post of all things. So, saw this from PokeBeach, thought it was funny. It's a Reddit meme about some of the new card art. My son just pulled this art rare that's supposed to have a Pokemon on it, but it's just a stupid tree. They forgot to include the Pokemon. Quality control of Pokemon cards have really gone downhill lately. So yeah, obviously just like a joke post and a meme, but this is actually something I've been thinking about for a while, especially when like new card art and new sets from Pokemon pops in my feed. It seems like the designs for the art has been drastically different, has like all kinds of like more humans involved, different species, less focus on like one main Pokemon. So I just kind of gave that observation. Aside from the joke post, so I didn't even like fall for the bait of this post to get angry about, where it's just like, look how stupid and talk to Pokemon community is, they can't even see that it's... No, obviously it's a joke. But the expectation that I'd be like negative about it or something, even though other people fell for this. So, something I've been interested into looking into. I thought there's been interviews and articles on card art rules in the past where you could see that they were more strict. Pokemon used to be very prominently featured and identifiable, and that other species weren't allowed. It feels like a lot of new cards break all the rules. And again, this is just an observation I've had over the last couple of years, and I felt like this was a good place and good post to put this on. Seems like a reasonable question, because if anything, maybe we get a response from PokeBeach, maybe the community is like, oh yeah, you might have thought about this interview, or maybe this thing, and other people just kind of observing the same thing, because it seems to be a fact that card art has had different rules compared to the past, especially if you grew up with it like I have from base set. So it looks like we're in a good place to have an interesting discussion about Pokemon cards, right? No. Nobody cares what you think. The new art cards rock. Except I didn't say anything negative or disparage the card or the post at all. So this really shows that most of the Pokemon community just lives for hate and negativity, also backed up by the incredibly high like ratio. So right after Elon bought Twitter, he said the average like to view ratio was like 1 to 1.5%, so that's a good gauge to kind of see how a post is doing, and anything that goes above that, or even well above that, kind of shows it's a much more engaged and agreed upon thing. And generally, in replies, you're going to see a lower amount of likes, but also just like the hate culture and going for ratios and stuff, regardless if they're just deranged or not. So yeah, I think I have a good response here. I didn't give an opinion on the new card art. You are projecting because I live rent-free in your deranged mind. That's all the haters. They see me and they immediately go to hate, no matter how correct I am, or even if I'm just asking a question. They fabricate things I've never said every time, all day, every day. This is even going on with other posts because everyone's hating on Dragon's Dogma 2, a single-player game, for having microtransactions, even though you can just go to one of my recent videos where people are mad at me and saying like, oh, Helldivers 2 can't be pay to win because it's not a multiplayer game. Even though I never said Helldivers 2 is a pay-to-win game in that video, again, people just projecting things I never said because they only want to be hateful and just a part of this outrage mob because they're terminally online. So microtransactions in Helldivers 2 are okay because it's a PvE game, but a single-player PvE game is not allowed to have microtransactions, and then people are just like non-stop saying, oh, this is going to kill the game, this is the worst thing, and I made the objective post like, well, the game's actually growing in audience, and it's hitting higher highs and higher lows, so that's not slowing anyone down. People complaining are just brats, and then this is true, and I agree, just not with you. I see this comment non-stop all day, every day. And because I'm an adjusted, rational person, I just can't comprehend any kind of behavior like this because I've never partaken in it in myself. That over the last decade of my channel is just like proving the insane hypocrisy and toxicity and derangement in the Pokemon community, but also it's like gaming and social media, and I've been making commentary on that. It's absolutely insane. So yeah, these guys just like love to hate bandwagon, even though they're just making things up about me, things I never said. It's crazy. But we got more. Go back to spinning signs, Tony. You know they're just a complete weirdo when they try to like use your real name, even though like my alias is what I go by. You're not getting any point across. You didn't find any secret information about me, or you're trying to like that's some weird parasocial stuff. You're not my mom, and you also have like absolutely no relevance to me or my life. So using my name that I don't go by online does nothing. Like, it doesn't add anything to it. It just shows that you're an idiot. So I go, you need to seek help for all that toxicity and negativity you carry, because again, like, this has nothing to do with my comment. I didn't say anything negative or disparaging. I tried to open a discussion, but these people just have hate on the mind, so that's all they know. And then, they got triggered by an observation. Yeah, they absolutely need to seek help. And of course, that's just going to make them spiral into nonsense. Hey, I think a smarmy AI defending, and now just like straight into insults as well, which is what they accuse me of. Oh, Verlisify insults everyone by calling them idiots, even though they refuse to accept facts, which kind of makes them an idiot by definition. They're allowed to hate me, Me making exposed video on someone else for the fact that Wolfie cheats, or revealing how Pokemon Challenges is evil and all the other bad actors in the Pokemon community like A-Drive, that's not allowed. That's forbidden. That makes me the worst person ever. But anyone is free to lie about me. You actually get more credit. The stronger the lie, the better it is to attack and expose and berate me. So again, just like more hypocrisy, more double standards, and cognitive dissonance. That's all they know, because they have no argument against me. They are incapable of positive contributions to their communities or even society. They're just a sack of meat and bones piloted by hate. Take a look back on yourself and realize your lack of value. Crazy projection right there. And politely kick bricks. So then link a playlist that allegedly has all the things I've done wrong. And I ask for an example. So this is another thing that if you follow me on Twitter, or also you just watch a lot of my videos, or just look around at all the hate around me, I ask, I beg. I even beg in videos. I beg on Twitter threads. I beg everywhere. Please give one example of something I've gotten wrong, of something that actually shows I am a bad person. And every time I ask, they always leave. They never respond. They never give anything. Or they just link a video and say, there's your proof. And then I ask for one example. If there's so much, if I've done so many things wrong, it should be trivial to give one concrete thing that I've done wrong from that video. If you can't transcribe it, it proves the video is bullshit. I've already debunked everything in the playlist, and I'll happily do it again for any example, which is why I request, okay, what's the worst thing you think I've done? I can easily dismiss it. So yeah, a decade of hating for no valid reason. Big seek help right there. Your lack of comment on the AI stuff is rather telling, even though I've explained it countless times, and it's very simple. Human artists and AI trained by viewing publicly accessible art without permission, so there's no theft unless all human artists are theft. With the most basic of common sense, it's easy to see how there's no theft in the training of general AI art models. So it's and that's also a new thing. 99% of the people that hated me before I started getting into AI art stuff and defending it. So if you didn't have a reason before, and now you're just trying to make up all this stuff or retroactively hate me because I support AI, that's also you being in the wrong. So yeah, I've never done it. And also, yeah, something contrarian. A decade of contrarianism and self-aggrandizing prattle. I mean, that's also just more lies, Fine, give one example. Find one example of me being contrarian. Never happened. I've always hated Smogon. I didn't go, what's the biggest way to grow my channel? Oh, I got it. Hate on the largest competitive Pokemon community. And also just, most of the Pokemon community, because even non-competitive players, they follow Smogon, they follow those creators and that kind of metagame and those rule sets. No, that's not how you do it. That's the thing, controversy, drama, that hasn't been able to grow channels since Leafy got terminated. After that, YouTube said, no, dislikes actually hurt you in the algorithm, and anything controversial gets you suppressed. And also, we're seeing, more hate, more toxicity, more mob mentality and mass formation. So if you're not with the popular thing, social media consumes and suppresses you, and everyone knows the tricks. Hate brigades don't exist to attack the creator, because it used to be personal. It used to be, yo, let's bully this person for disagreeing with us off the internet, and then hopefully we'll never see them again. But now it's, no, we're going to target them in the algorithm. It's deliberate suppression attacks. So upsetting more people has absolutely no way of growing, so it's not a good strategy, but I'm also not fake. I'm going to be honest and have the same opinions I've always had. All of my reactions to Pokemon news are live. It's impossible for me to wait and then gauge what people are thinking about it and then be a contrarian about it, because it's all an initial thing. I love Pokemon Let's Go on the start. I supported Pokemon Sword and Shield from the very beginning. I teared up when I saw that first trailer from the Pokemon Presents, and then I held through because, oh, bring back National Dex is stupid, and I saw that as it was happening live through the E3 demo. I went, yeah, this isn't that big of a problem. Actually, it's a good thing, because there's just way too much Pokemon bloat. This is going to make, the meta better. As we learn Pokemon Let's Go, reduced Dex can be a good thing, and I never cared for completing the Dex, and Pokemon Home has all of your Pokemon safe and happy anyways. There's no problem. Only after did that become a problem. It's almost like the Pokemon community is contrary to me. The hate against me is so prevalent, a lot of people say if I want cheating to go away in Pokemon, I just need to support ginning. So yeah, I ask for an example, they deflect, they dodge, I continue to ask, and then they just never respond and they never give an example. And that's like the 5,000th time that it's happened. So it's like, how worthless do you have to be to fabricate hate of someone else and just make things up? That also goes back to the other post where it's like, you are projecting words I didn't say. Same thing on the Helldivers 2. At no point in the video did I say Helldivers 2 is pay to win or that it would be a bad thing if it was. They just projected that onto me because, oh, now we're in the Helldivers defense squad and anything that's challenging any kind of thought, no matter what it's doing, or if it just or if the optics don't agree with what I perceive it to be, I'm just going to project and then attack over it. Big problem with social media, gaming, everything. Now, there was some discussion that I was looking for, and this is why I wanted to bounce some other things off of. So we do find a little bit in the community, which is a good thing. Pokemon need to be very prominently featured and identifiable, and that multiple other species weren't allowed. If I recall, these were the rules for the Pokemon art contest. Full-time illustrators likely adhere to a different set of rules. Now, I disagree with this part, but again, that's discussion. Maybe there's a forum post, maybe there's an interview, maybe there's something specific to point to, but I'd imagine that's going to be pretty similar unless the artist is specifically commissioned to have a multiple species piece for some reason. And then I relate it to another post, an interview that was on Pokebeach. It doesn't have anything about the actual guidelines and rules, but it does show like the critiquing process is pretty difficult, and there's even a note about it from the maker of the article. Revising drafts sounds like a difficult and stressful task because you can't slip. And there's even little bits right here, you know, having a single mountain in the background looks like a specific mountain, maybe Mount Coronet or Fuji, be better to have a more generic mountain range. So you can't like mix up locations in Pokemon. You can't have too many anatomy flaws when it comes to that, and then the Pokemon design just needs to look as good as possible for the card art. So you'd imagine that, you know, if you see other consistent trends like the lack of multiple species across card art historically, that could be a rule or a guidance. And then the response from someone else is negativity, because you have to prove Verlisify wrong. You have to show that he's an idiot and doesn't know what he's talking about, even though this guy is just completely wrong in his derangement. None of these are guidelines or rules, though, except for this guideline or rule. So there's always a but. There's always an except. There's always a however. So it's like, well, actually, no, we actually see rules inside of this post, which suggests there's other rules, and of course there are. These just seem like relatively generic critiques on an early draft, but they're also pretty strict about it. This is another thing that happens a lot with the Verlisify derangement syndrome, that I can quote or reference someone else, but people only get mad at me, and they don't get mad at the original post or information. Revising drafts sounds like a difficult and stressful task, and there's also other information inside of the interview. But no, that doesn't exist. This doesn't exist. No, it's only me being toxic and negative because I made the observation that it can be a stressful task and that it seems like there's rules and guidelines, which this person admits to, but then says it doesn't exist. Cognitive dissonance. Hell of a drug. You really don't know how to enjoy anything, do you? And that's like where all the idiots have gotten so oppressive and all the toxicity and negativity has gotten so common, especially when it comes to Pokemon, that words lose meaning, but they also become more accurate as time goes on. That like, yeah, you can just say everyone's projecting, but it really seems like everyone's projecting when it's like, oh, you're the miserable cretin, and here's a lie about you to prove it. It's like, well, that means you're so miserable and you acknowledge your own lack of self-worth, so you have to make up reasons to hate other people because you have no other contribution. Right here, it's like, this person clearly doesn't know how to enjoy anything because he's projecting his lack of enjoyment onto something I never said. You know, I'm here trying to enhance my enjoyment by digging up information, by expanding what I know about Pokemon, because I find this to be an interesting discussion. They can't do any of that. So I become the outlet for these miserable people to try to dump their misery and hate onto. And then that's just like perfectly accurate, especially when you kind of see how consistent it is and how much it just keeps on happening. And then we have a since when. That's kind of the whole point of my initial observations. Like, it seems like the very beginning, it was just the Pokemon with rare exception, and that is actually a fact. But before we get into that, one more. Dude, no one cares about your opinion on Pokemon cards. You've been regarded as one of the worst Pokemon players for a decade. objectively a lie that I have over a decade of massive success and consistent elite level of play in Pokemon battles. But even then, like, how I perform in Pokemon battles has nothing to do with, like, me as a general Pokemon fan or my interest in the Pokemon TCG. But no, they only know how to hate and support hate. Also ignoring that I'm actually the best Pokemon player in the world because all of the other top players are proven cheaters, which disqualifies them from any form of discussion. And also there's a long history of me being the best and undefeated before I started YouTube. Like Generation 4, I was king. So one dude came in, he says, "This proves you wrong, and I can give you another 100 examples from the earlier set of multiple species of Pokemon," and it was a post with Light Jolteon. Problem: that's one of 2 from the Neo Destiny set that shows multiple, like, different species of Pokemon, not from the same evolutionary line. Which is also another observation. Like, yeah, it's fine if you have the pre-evolution in the card and it doesn't take up any significant space in the card. The other one being Light Wigglytuff, which is actually hard to see until you click on it, like, oh, Caterpie just looks like grass and is just chilling there, so it doesn't even, like, stand out. So it seems like this is one of the first examples of it happening, but it takes until Generation 2 set, and it's still extremely rare, being like 2, maybe 3 cards from a set if I'm missing another one. But that doesn't really prove me wrong or confirm I was trying to be negative and controversial like all of these posts are trying to say. And if you go back to the base set was just the Pokemon, prominently featured, and that seemed to set the tone for a good long while. And there's other trends that I've noticed, which is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for trends. Maybe there is an interview. Maybe there are some guidelines that have gotten out about Pokemon card design. Then we can kind of see how all of this turns into a discussion for the post. But yeah, you can't confuse it when it's like, this is one of the first exposures of Pokemon. So then this guy was like, "See, Verlisify, you're just toxic and hateful and you can never admit you're wrong." And then I went, well, there's not an example from EX Ruby Sapphire. So showing that if we're doing like the first set of a generation, it's going to be just those Pokemon, especially if the Pokemon is new. So if the Pokemon community wasn't miserable and just blindly hated me, we could actually have some really good discussion because observation. If a Pokemon has already been featured predominantly in a card art, it can have other species. We have like a Generation 1 Pokemon, it's kind of sharing space with some other Pokemon, and also it seems like a different thing. You know, this is not just Wigglytuff, it's Light Wigglytuff. So alternative versions of Pokemon might also have something where it's like, oh, we have the light versions interacting with other Pokemon because it seems like a nice, fun, lighthearted thing, and these are also previous generation Pokemon. The Togepi in here is kind of weird. But, like, Togepi was also established in Generation 1, and maybe had a card before Neo Destiny, because Neo Genesis came first. So Neo Destiny being the last of Generation 2, and this is the first example that someone pointed out of, like, multiple species being in. So again, like, kind of showing that for a while, or at least still primarily, there's going to be set rules about how it goes, and then Ruby Sapphire still has none. Because the first exposure of a Generation 3 Pokemon and a new generation base set needs to have just that Pokemon to not confuse anything. So I said the dude is lying when he says he can give 100 examples because he has 2 from one set in 3 generations. This guy, you know, there are more card arts in that set alone with multiple Pokemon. You clearly didn't look hard enough. I was just skimming because I was saying about Ruby Sapphire, not Neo Destiny, and there's also other sets that came before it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever. Like there a lot of sets came before. So like, yeah, cool. You have 2, 3 examples over 2 generations. Stop moving the goalpost and take the L. Well, I haven't moved any goalpost here. I didn't say it never happened before. I'm just saying like it seems like the guidelines are against it, or there's more strictness about having multiple species, and clearly having the same evolutionary line isn't going to count for this argument because it doesn't distract from the theme. And then we have another one that kind of gets a little deeper and expands the discussion. I don't know if I'd really count this one as fully featured, but it technically goes as far back as Gym Heroes, with a separate species getting their hair braided by Tangela. And that's correct. And like, these are things I'm looking for. This is interesting. It makes the discussion a lot more nuanced. Does it debunk me? No. Would I have realized or known about this if someone didn't feel like contributing to the discussion? Also, no. So here I'm trying to paint a picture, understand what's going on, use history and things, but there's just like an overwhelming amount of hate that's here to try to debunk and dunk on me and say like, yep, you can't take the L's, even though that's just like completely wrong. I said other species to not include evolutionary line. So I'm not moving goalposts. It's not like I secretly tried to weasel my way out of that. No, my intention was always, well, if it's also from the evolutionary line, of course that's going to be treated differently. Twitter is not a place for nuanced discussion, and it gets worse and worse every day, but at the same time, I'm trying to condense it to not make it super wordy, but again, it just kind of projection into things I never said. So looking at the list of cards, it's hard to see the green Caterpie in the grass. So yeah, it's like this person's like, oh, you missed it, you're blind, you're just completely wrong. So that's it, like 2 examples in a whole set isn't proving me wrong or taking an L, but no, we must hate on Verlisify, and we must support all of this derangement that actually doesn't prove anything wrong about anything you said or done. Great. And then just keeps on getting weird. Did I miss one in Ruby Sapphire EX that had multiple Nidoran M and Dragon Frontiers? That's a difference. That's something completely different. So if you watch the podcast I'm one of the hosts of, also if you don't, watch it, RMTS, we've been bringing up like how Reddit is just a cesspool. And stuff like this that really shows the extreme narcissism that has infected social media. So one Reddit post was like a woodworking thing where someone's like, hey, how do I do this? And someone just like, glue it, nail it, put it together. And then the response under that was boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. So someone wanted their fake internet points and their little 3 seconds of people agreeing with them and their micro fame to be completely unhelpful. A Lord of the Rings quote in response to a question where someone is asking for genuine help in a community is narcissism. It's deranged. So we have the same thing here. We're like, well, I'm asking something completely different. This guy thinks he got me while being completely wrong, and also kind of like proving me more right. Dragon Frontiers is the end of Generation 3. Now I'm sure there's multiple species of Pokemon and other cards in these sets. That means we have 3 examples across 3 entire generations. And does that mean like this person went through all the list, or at least skimmed them for an hour just to find one other example to think that that's an own? Same thing with this guy. EX Ruby Sapphire has 2 cards with different Pokemon. I don't recall seeing that. Which ones? Energy Switch and Switch. So just an idiot using trainer cards, which aren't about featuring a Pokemon. And then this person says EX Ruby Sapphire is the only set that doesn't have one, except for the other Generation 1 sets, except for one example in the Gym Hero set, and it seems like probably many other sets as well. Why are you trying to make that the rule when it clearly isn't? Even though, again, just like the fabrications of an ill mind are fascinating. And then we get some civil discourse, a little bit of rationality in this insane community where one of the goals is like, hey, maybe the person posting this, Pokebeach, one of the most knowledgeable people when it comes to Pokemon cards and Pokemon card history, gives a little bit of insight. And then we can further develop what's going on. Maybe they have the interview. Maybe they just have like a hard debunk against it, but at least we get a little bit of something. Answer. Illustration rares are supposed to show a Pokemon in their environment. Regular cards focus on the Pokemon. There we go. And that's one of those things like, yes, that feels like the observation. Regular cards focus on the Pokemon. Do we have a hard rule or interview about it? No, but it seems to just kind of be a strong guideline that holds true for 98% of cards in a set, except for what feels like recently. However, that could also just be like bias through observing illustration rares, because I see way more illustration rare posts on Reddit, social media, Facebook, Twitter, just in general, because those are the flashy cards, those are the chase cards, those are like the ones that look really cool and have more going on, but those are allowed to bend the rules because it's an alternative form. It shows the Pokemon in their environment, which includes other trainers, which includes other Pokemon, things that are traditionally absent from regular cards, especially in the past. And I note on that, makes a lot of sense with this being the same Applin card. It explains the higher frequency of seeing non-standard card art, because there's been illustration rares since Generation 8, I believe, and again, those are the ones that get a lot more attention, so it feels like there's more rules being broken for the TCG card art, even though the regular cards are still seemingly about the same, but even then, like, maybe through Generation 7, Generation 8, just general, like, looking at TCG set, seems like there's a little bit more variety, a little bit more leeway in species interacting and Pokemon card prevalence. Because, like, yes, that is an Applin card. This, as a standard Applin card, would be a quality control failure, unironically, outside of the post, but as we can see, it's a different rule set, because it's a different kind of cards, and we also have, like, interviews and other stuff. And the one guy talking about the art illustration contest, you can see the art illustration contest is about primarily featuring the Pokemon. Some rules say you can have other species, but I believe there's also been other rules in the past that say, like, no, just this Pokemon. So yeah, those are the shenanigans I got into over the last couple of days, and anyone that's been following my channel and understands how rotten the Pokemon community has become saw this as the outcome. It's like, everything is noise, everything is like hate, toxicity, trash, garbage, unproductive, except for like a few randoms that are passionate and actually real Pokemon fans. Everyone else just like projects because I live rent-free in their mind, and the only thing they can do is hate because they have no functioning brain whatsoever. They've never had any real social interactions, and they can't even remember life before smartphone was put into their hands. And then the actual like informed person or authority in the community might eventually step in and interact and then put it to rest or have like a little bit extra to add to the discussion. So my post achieved its goal, but also had the side effect of like proving Verlisify is always right and also never the problem. Interesting. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.